2023. The time is 9 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Matari and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with our first discussion item, the all hazards mitigation policy. Was everybody able to review that? The only response I got was from Bela. Thoughts?
Well, I think from the citizens' perspective, at least just for the county building, it would be nice to have some guidelines, maybe. So someone doesn't show up for one office because it's closed, but another office is open. But that's just to help, the citizen as far as having some continuity. But I recognize too that each elected official, is responsible for their own departments. And sometimes it can get a little confusion. There's confusion with one person wanting to be closed, another person wanting to be open, and things like that. But I like the idea of at least having something for the services in the county building.
Okay. So I was fine with the simplicity of it. I didn't want to make it over burdensome or wordsome. So are you okay? Do you have any additions or subtractions?
Well, it mentioned something about the part-time employees. So
yeah, they've got to be included. We're not going to have part-time employees come with that. So that was just a question.
Yeah, it's really just the standard. Do we want to follow a standard or not? It seems like the court system has their own standard. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that standard is a higher bar or lower.
It is actually a higher bar.
It makes me wonder if that's not the bar we should just follow, and at least that way there's like an agreement among folks that if the courts are closed, we're closed.
That's a good
likely
thought.
Never happened.
No, that's not true. The ADJ has said that if circumstances warrant, she would close and then contact Supreme Court. So.
But it does help to have one standard for everybody, because then what happens is the group that has to show up is going to say, well, look, they're not showing up, and it creates an inequity.
Yeah. So I guess, are you saying that the Board of County Commissioners should be the determination? Or is it two members or one person determining? And then is it elected officials determining if their departments are closed, or the county itself, the building, being closed for the commissioners?
No, the hazard policy kind of states that the commissioners will decide to close the building or not close the building. But I don't know, maybe we follow the courts.
If the courts are the standard.
Is this only for the
admin campus?
The admin campus.
This building, yeah.
It has nothing to do with any other.
Nope. So.
The courts are typically always in custody defendants and time-sensitive hearings that we have to accomplish within a set time frame. Right. And unfortunately, we have had weather-related issues in the past. Some judges have shut everything down, while other judges have maintained court. It's just a matter of whether or not they have internet access to have their files open or not. And so we've had inconsistency in the court system with what remains open. So I don't know if that's a good standard to follow or not.
Good point.
Do the courts ever open up late?
Yes, that's happened. It's all usually dependent on whether or not the internet's working and if they have access to their file system.
Yeah.
And so they'll typically try to notify prosecutor's office, public defender's office, private counsel, that we're going to be starting an hour late. But more often than not, the courts are wanting to continue business, even with bad weather.
So I have a question. I know that there was a recent weather event. Is that what's driving this, and the perception of, like you said, Bruce, the inequity issue? Is that really what is?
What's driving the policies? We've had several issues in the last 4 years that have caused problems. So we're trying to get consistency on board.
Right, but and I understand that. But if the objective is to achieve an equitable situation, I would ask that we consider that some situations are not going to be equitable. There are uniqueness with regard to different operations. For example, if you have an emergency event and you need law enforcement or you need roads to work on the roads, by virtue of the position and the job and the department, they're going to need to be present. That's what they got to work on. So I think by definition, there are going to be incomparable.
I don't think that there's a policy on the planet that can cover every contingency. So that's why we have people to make those decisions
Exactly.
on the spot.
Exactly, and that's why I'm thinking it should be more of a guidance.
So I'm not sure why we would split the definition of policy and guidance. I mean, this policy offers flexibility because it offers the person on the ground the ability to say, yes, I think this is a situation where we shouldn't come in, and it's not made in a vacuum. OEM's contacted, Building and Grounds is contacted.
But all those provisions are already in place.
No, that's what this guideline is for. That's what this policy is for, to put those in place.
Just still one question, is it one person making the call on the Board of County Commissioners or two of you deciding?
I would like it to be one, and it can be rotating on a yearly basis or 6-month basis or, whatever. I've been here when we've tried to get two, and it took too much time. And I think that's unfair to employees and in the situation. I'd be happy with keeping this simple, keeping the way it is, but then realizing that the commissioner on duty, if you will consult the courts and find out, make that one of their determining factors in the decision to shut the admin building down.
I think the other thing to consider, just after talking to payroll, is sometimes the scenario of the admin pay is that it doesn't create overtime, that we're making the employee whole, the 40 hours. I don't know if we need to write something in that policy too, when we had the event in December when some offices and electeds closed down. But it needs to be clear when the board gives that direction, I guess, that they're going to pay. Is essentially it's the board making the direction on the administrative pay. That it's not creating an overtime or making people whole for those 40 hours of the week.
Yeah, so if let's just say that late start, for instance. Okay, hey, the roads are closed, we can't get plowed, or there's trees down or whatever. We're going to start at 10 a.m. today. Okay. Yeah, those 2 hours are going to be admin pay for all the employees affected.
So I just want to clarify if at this point it's the board determining every department in the admin building, whether it's going to be closed or not, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Bruce?
Is it for the public-facing side, or is it just for all the people?
Well, it's more based on, is it hazardous to come to work or not?
Yeah.
Is the power out? Are we actually going to be able to function?
Yeah.
So it's those, it's pretty extreme and drastic. We're not talking about, we're going to get 4 inches of snow and schools closed. This is a way higher standard than schools.
Okay.
So.
It's just something to consider too. On that day, there were employees that their cars were stuck. They hadn't time to get the snow tires. Not everyone has all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, but you have to balance the idea of any kind of claims or people falling and the accidents and people pushing out cars. They had to leave their car overnight because they couldn't get out. So I don't know how we take that into consideration if we have employees concerned about their safety. At that point, maybe it's accruals if you guys don't make that determination.
Yes. So this had happened, I guess it was the December one.
Yeah.
Right, where if employees felt uncomfortable, the elected official had the opportunity to say, okay, you can go home, but it'll be vacation. And so, we're not going to keep somebody here who's concerned about their safety, but that's on them. That's not a BOCC paid for issue.
That's where I'm having a little difficulty with, we know that the county commissioners have the power of the purse. We had a previous commissioner that went to every meeting and kept pounding that into the group that they have the power of the purse. We know that. But to have to include that in here, the Board of County Commissioners will determine administrative leave with pay. So if I have an employee, an overachiever, who stays an hour or two all the time, I'm not adult enough to be able to say, hey, you know what, you put in like 6 extra hours last week. You know, if you want to come in, you know, at X or because of this weather-related event. That's where the messaging, where I'm
That's
feeling a
flex
little.
time. That's flex time. That is not admin pay. It's flex time.
But this is a theme that appears to be coming to the forefront. But if my other electeds don't believe that that's a theme, I'll understand that. But it seems to be, we know that you have the power of the purse, but you don't need to ram it down our throat all the time. But am I the only one that feels that way? Bailey, you probably feel that way, but but Jen?
I do feel like you guys have the ability, the Board of County Commissioners, just that policy. But it's the idea if we're observing something within our department or a safety concern, you know, making that call. Like again, Clerk Brandon made that call because he was very concerned about the safety of the employees. So I do have concern on that this is going to be a policy, and like Bayla said, not just a guide, because once it's set in policy, it's something we do need to follow.
The other thing I want to add is if you look at Title 46, Chapter 10, Section 46-1009, I believe it's adequately addressed and covered in statute. The Board of County Commissioners will assign a liaison, and then you work out the specifics given the unique circumstance of the disaster or the emergency event. You can't foresee all possibilities, and therefore that flexibility needs to be maintained. I believe the Board of County Commissioners already has that authority in statute, and it makes sense the way it's structured. So,
Bruce?
Well, I mean, there's one idea here is, what if the board just says it's so bad that we're going to offer administrative pay, and the electeds decide what they want to do depending upon what's happening at that point in time? And gives at least a little bit of flexibility.
I don't know, you know, I guess I don't believe that we want to micromanage each elected. I have not received so many calls when we have either for shut down for IDT purposes because the software is not operational or because of weather-related event. I haven't received that many of them, and I just don't know if we're putting a lot of energy into something that is maybe not a problem. I mean, I don't know what the data point is that there is a problem.
It's only a problem when a big event happens and there's a lot of confusion, and I'm fielding, 12 phone calls because, like, what do? Do we send people home? Do we not send people home? I have people who are scared. I have people who want to stay. I have people who didn't come in. So it's just trying to eliminate those types of situations where it's on the fly instead of like, okay, the decision's been made, late start, decision's been made, early close, decision's been made, campus is closed today.
well, what does the contingency plan call for? And I'm asking this question because I have not read it, so I don't know. But my impression and my understanding is Title 46, Chapter 10 calls for a contingency plan. Wouldn't those issues pretty much all be outlined in the contingency plan? They're not going to address every nuance of every circle. You can't foresee them all. But what does the contingency plan say? That's my question.
We don't have a contingency plan that says, trees are down and you can't physically get to the admin building. I mean, there's not.
That would be too specific. That would cover the aspect that I said is too specific. Of
Yeah.
course, you're not going to have
So no,
that.
I'm not aware of this.
But there's a call for a command center. Is there a command? What would be the first designated command center? So if we have a number of people that can't report to work, but they're deemed essential employees and they have to get work done, is there a command center identified somewhere? And does it have the resources so that employees can continue to work? Those are the kind of things I'm wondering whether they're addressed or not in the contingency plan.
Not that I'm aware of. And Tiffany's actually going to be working with each elected official to come up with continuity of operations. We have them now, but she's updating them and getting more specific. Bruce?
Jennifer, perhaps you could kind of just just for my own information, like how does it work in the past when, in your department, when the weather was so bad?
So I'll give
You
you what
decided or not
happened
decided
in
what to
December. I called Clerk Brandon regarding, and it's different for each department. Ones that are public facing that we're serving the public, and like for instance the auditor, they're not necessarily serving the public, and most of them can work from home, and that becomes an issue in our department or in the clerk's division because not everyone can work from home or remote in. So Jim made that call on the air of being safety of the employees and their concern. And then what was happening in the parking lot, cars were sliding even a week later into each other on the other side of the courthouse area of the parking. And then people were slipping. So I think it's balancing employees' concerns and safety, but I don't know how to balance employees that are forward facing to the public and people that are not serving the public. And Jim at that time made the call with other elected officials to say at noon, we're closing, and that the people that showed up, we would make them whole for that day. Especially if they were hourly, essentially.
Okay. And so making them whole, was that using administrative
Yeah,
pay?
yes.
Admin
Okay.
pay.
So they weren't using vacation or any kind of accruals. Now, if they did not show up, then I think that at that point they were using vacation. Some people were able to work from home. District court, we did like a skeleton crew. So it's a hard call on our department, probably I would say the sheriff too, being that we're mandated, and some of our, and Bela too is public facing where we're serving the public. But at the time, I know we've had bomb threats, probably like, was that 4 or 5 years ago? An elected official made the call because of the concern of his staff, that he was, put them at ease, that he would send them home and close. So you're trying to make that decision and balance it, and then worry about employees that actually can't work from home and then actually still have to service the public too.
And so are people open to the idea, the elected officials open to the idea of having a standard from which to follow to kind of guide when things happen? Or is it something that you just would really rather have your own autonomy on deciding? I mean, because that's really what this is. The way I read it is it's just a standard. It's just saying, hey, if these things happen, this threshold is met, at least we have some triggers for what does and does not happen in the county building on the campus. Am I pretty correct on that?
You're just gonna create inequity problems when you have one elected official shut everything down, send everybody home, and the other elected official doesn't
Yeah,
do that.
So it's just a matter are people open to at least entertaining a standard?
Well, I think the biggest thing in this policy that it states that I'm reading, again, the board sets policy, is that the Board of County Commissioners are determining, it seems just for the admin building for closure, and the other thing too, so if we are not on the admin building, say elections close or the sheriff's office, are you guys still determining what is administrative leave pay for those employees that are not at the admin building? If what's acceptable or not?
Well, okay, so you have a pipe break at elections, and you have to send everybody home. I mean, that's gonna be covered under admin, and you're just gonna let your liaison know, like, hey, we have to do this. So it's not
I guess,
Yeah.
I don't have, to answer your question,
Yeah, I
Bruce,
don't-
I don't have a concern with a standard, I don't have a concern with a guideline. I think those are helpful, but they're guidelines, they're not gonna cover every nuance of every situation. One of the concerns I do have is, and I don't know if this is coming to us from the attorneys or what, but is the perception of an inequity. So using your example, if you have a pipe break, by the very definition of the situation, it is inequitable. Why does there have to be a need to create equity where there really is not equity? Why should the taxpayers have to fund all the other departments that are not impacted by the emergency event when the pipe break only affects one department? That doesn't seem to make sense to me.
I don't think we're saying that.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
No, just because it's admin campus. So if some departments feel like they can be here and be serving the public, but another one doesn't, that's where I'm trying to get a little bit of consistency to say, either we're all here or we're all not here.
I get that, but I guess it's the people that can telecommute and work from home when certain departments can't. And then you're saying, okay, and I am open to, the vision of what you guys are looking at, but it's now you're saying to an employee, well, you're going to stay back.
Right.
And they take it as, well, maybe you're not concerned about my safety as much. So on that situation, the snowstorm, there was a lot of concern regarding driving and then just getting out of the parking lot in general, and then the idea of any kind of claims of people falling. So I don't really have an answer to it, but I think, I guess do we approach you guys and saying, these are the concerns with our employees?
Absolutely. Just
But
like
it's
it
kind of
happened last
interesting,
time.
it seems like part of the confusion is the definition of a hazard, because, if a department has most of their employees that are essential living in Coeur d'Alene or a few blocks away, that's a lot different than someone who has employees that are living out in Rathdrum or Spirit Lake or somewhere else that have to have a long drive, and the conditions can be dramatically different,
Yeah.
20 miles from here than they can be 1 mile from here. So that's part of the confusion, is that it's going to be tough when the same hazard has different effects in different parts of the county. So
Yeah.
that makes it hard to solidify for all departments when it's going to be the same hazard is going to have a lot of problems or different problems in different locations.
Right, and what Jennifer was saying as well, you're going to have some positions that are, just by virtue of the role that the position is, it can be a position that you can telecommute, others are not. And so trying to create a standard where there is already a difference between these two types of positions.
And I think telecommuting is somewhat an inequity in some ways for some employees that
Yeah,
can do it,
right.
and some that have to stay.
Yeah, but your job is your job. So
I
your job
agree.
you can either do that or you can't do that. So there's no way to make that up. I mean.
No, and I'll
so-
tell you, in our departments.
And I agree
try
with
to
that.
Work
That's
always
basically
at
what I'm
the-
saying.
Yeah.
at the office, but there are other electeds and departments that have a lot of people working telecommute many hours, and it's and again, it's different when the department's public facing and the others, like the auditor, is not. That's a hard call to make on employees, because it's, again, bringing up their concerns of safety as well. Either they're going home or telecommuting, but yet we have to stay here. And honestly, I'll be usually the last person to close something, but that day we had a lot of people literally pushing out their cars out of this parking lot, and cars sliding into other cars and people slipping and falling, so.
Well, and for me that day, when Sheriff Norris is closing down his office and he knows what's happening across the county, that to me made it an easier decision. So thank you.
I mean, there is a spirit from law enforcement that encourages people, hey, if you don't have to go outside, it's a significant storm coming. If you don't have to, then don't go outside. So there is a spirit there that ISP puts out that, well, if it's not absolutely critical, then maybe it might be best in this windstorm or in this particular event that we stay home and get our copy of our marriage license next week.
And here's one example that we went through. When we went through the windstorm in 2021, when I came in, it took me a long time to get in because there were down poles and electric wires everywhere. I had to follow a labyrinth just to get here. But when I got here, the power was out. We had a significant number of people that were already here. It took about 3 or 4 hours to get power turned on, but then power was on. I never did get power back on my house for I think even a week. But we ended up sending people back home who were already here. And if the premise is, let's keep them off the streets because it's dangerous conditions on the streets, what we were doing is we were sending people back out into the streets who had already arrived, and we were defeating the very purpose for which we were trying to achieve, to keep them off the streets. And so I guess my point is, every situation is different and every situation is unique, and that's why you need to preserve the decision-making capability among the electeds to make the decisions based on that unique set of circumstances.
So I don't see how this policy is making that unachievable. Because I was the one contacting and making those decisions during that windstorm.
Okay.
And we decided for late start because it gave crews chance to clear some trees and
Okay.
stuff. And then other departments, actually, I'm not sure if we actually even canceled that day because of the power outage.
Can't remember. I don't remember if the whole day was then, I think the whole day then was said, don't report to work.
Right, yeah. And I think Building and Grounds was already here, and Barry McHugh and Steve Matheson were already here. And they're
Right.
like, yeah, tell people don't come in. So this is not made in a vacuum.
No.
One person is not just,
But we had people here available, working, power was out, but they were able to get work done and service the public to the extent that power was or wasn't on. I think the generator kicked in.
I think the intention is to avoid having people come in before,
Right,
and not sending them back out on the road for a
Right.
second round of danger.
right.
So it's just having a standard where we can say this threshold has been passed, and now, we have these kind of, guidelines to follow, just for continuity. I think that's really the intent, is just to have continuity in this building or this campus, and something that we can all kind of, agree on, whether it's a handshake or something. I personally don't like the idea of micromanaging people and telling you what's best for you, but at least having thresholds and investigating those thresholds to say, this happened, there's no power in the building, let's put the word out, this is what's going to happen. No one's going to show up until we either, know when we get power, it's going to be administrative leave, and tell folks to just be ready when the lights come back on. I'm assuming that's really what we're trying to accomplish here.
yes.
I don't think it's something where any one person wants to tell you how to do your job with your people.
Is it maybe a conversation we start having if we feel, hey, this is what's the situation on the ground in our departments, or what we're seeing out in the parking lot, or people coming in and out, that we call you guys, and then you guys make that determination? I know you guys, the board's department stayed open, but when you're balancing that and people are just so concerned and the safety issue, it becomes not productive at work. And like I said, I'm usually the last one that wants to tell people not to come in, but that day, Clerk Brandon, I think, looking back, did make the right call after hearing people trying to get out of the parking lot and the conditions. So I don't know the answer, because I think the policy is written that the board's going to make that call if the admin building is closed, meaning that's in effect every elected official, that they will have to stay open if they determine that it should stay open, and then the administrative leave, which I think you guys laid out well in those 3 bullet points in the policy covering that. If people don't show up, then they're using accruals. But I think it's a matter of people show up and we leave. You guys are making that call. If they leave, it's going to be either a closure of the building. At that point, it would be administrative leave with pay.
What do you think about in the draft policy that we were presented, the 3rd sentence in the 1st paragraph, where it says the Board of County Commissioners or designee will determine the county closures and the use of administrative leave with pay, changing the word determine to recommend?
Well, state law says that we control pay, so that's not really something that we're going to give to the elected officials and, usurp our duties. I mean,
But we're not talking about changing that. We're talking about on an individual case-by-case, because you've already determined pay. That's not the issue. What we're talking about is whether we're going to be closed on a given day. That's a unique set of circumstance that is a one-off from the norm.
so I guess I'm not following you.
I'm asking if would you consider changing the word determine to the word recommend?
No, because either you're closing campus or you're not closing campus. So,
Just for clarity, you're saying you're closing campus or not closing campus. You're not saying if you keep the campus open that Bela or any other elected official couldn't decide to close their office.
but they wouldn't be able to do it under administrative pay.
Got it.
They can offer their employees, hey, if you want to take vacation, we'll shut down the office.
That makes sense.
So,
And I understand why you'd want the authority to close the building, because if you close the building, especially if it's before people have come, if an office decides to stay open, building and grounds has to be here.
IT.
And that's your decision to make, not, I mean, Steve's not here, not Steve's. So that makes sense to me.
So basically, let's go back, I think what she was saying. So if you guys decide to leave the building open, example in December storm, and a department, when an elected official says, okay, you employees, we can close this department, but if you close it, if you can't work from home, is that still the same?
Well, no,
Then
they
you're
can
gonna
work
be-
from home, like HR work from home. They're like, hey, we saw the weather and Stan said we can work from home, we're all working from home. So that's, kind of.
Yeah, I guess
an
if we
example.
go back to departments that can't make that call because they're public facing. So I guess I'm trying to understand a scenario, like, let's say in the recorder's office, if those girls don't feel safe and they come to me and we discuss it with the manager and they say, okay, we're gonna close the department, at that point, some can work from home, maybe all could work from home, but say two can't, at that point, it's on their own accruals because we didn't close the building?
Yes.
Okay.
And we were able to work from home. We had people that didn't want to work from home and chose to use the accruals instead. They had the option of doing either, and some of them just said, snow day.
Okay. All right.
Okay, is there any life left in this horse or is it dead? All right, it'll come before a business meeting then. And then obviously the temporary seasonal employees are going to be included in this. All right, item 2, fleet management policy update. And I will have Keith run through this, so. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. About a year or so ago, we were kind of tasked with the fleet. Where we're going, what are we doing, how are we getting there? And nobody's really taking control, so several people were put together. Assessor's office, sheriff's office, and BOCC had parks, AMP, and grounds on it. The auditor's office, the coroner's office, and prosecutors and treasurer, because Steve was like, no, if I need to, I just go up to the assessor to borrow a car, type thing. And then the prosecutor is like, nah, our cars are good, you need us, and we'll give us our legal terms. So those are the reason why they weren't included. So we sat down, there was 10 of us, 11 of us that sat down together and we looked at the old policy. Currently in front of you, you have the old policy. Attached to it is the sheriff's policy. You don't have to pay attention to that. It was just the way it was sent to us. I just wanted to let you know what was sent to us when we first started. And then we went line by line as a group with everybody. Went through it, and then you have the draft policy that's on top there. We've tried to shorten it up, streamline it. The biggest thing that was happening is, in the previous ones, they were talking about pool cars. And it was like, okay, who's taking care of the pool cars? Who's responsible for it? Who's checking them out? Maintenance on them. There was a lot of things that just couldn't be answered without throwing it on one specific department. And so we just didn't think that was right. But everybody in their own departments take care of their vehicles. So, and then also there was another premise that they also were thinking was the pass down cars from the sheriff's office. Well, the sheriff's department wasn't getting enough cars, and there was things going on within the sheriff's department where, just aging out, they weren't be able to be used, or just things like that were happening. So the cars couldn't be passed down. So we had to go out, and it's like we did last year. I came in I think it was April or May, we came in with a list. The departments were contacted, and we replaced vehicles that we could just get off the lots, because it was, you guys know how hard it was to buy cars. So we were able to turn around, and if I'm not mistaken, we purchased like a total of 14 vehicles, and we were able to repurpose to other departments like 8 or 9 other vehicles. So pretty much all departments got affected somehow, where we were able to update and get them vehicles to be used. And I think at the same time, we sent out 8 vehicles for auction that were just sitting around. They shouldn't have been on the rolls because they're not being used. So what we did is we sat down, we went line by line, and we kind of came up with this draft policy for it. We were trying to be overall, we're not trying to say if anybody has a different policy in their own department. Alexis, if you have your own, we're not trying to tell you how to do it or anything like that. This was just brought forth to the BOCC. We're trying to make it as general as possible. I got one feedback from Assessor Kovacs there. I did change on there procurement in that line 1 there. I did add GSA list, state bids, or lowest price bid. So I added that, figured that would add and kind of take what you were talking about into it. I didn't receive any other feedback from anybody else on doing things. It's in front of you, looking for me to be able to have approval. It hasn't gone to legal yet because I didn't want to waste their time twice. So waiting for anything, feedbacks and direction or questions.
Questions or concerns for Keith? Bruce?
No, I mean, it looks like it's just a certain number of departments it really affects.
Yep.
So if it makes sense to those departments, then
Okay.
I'm good with it.
All right, I guess you can send it to legal, then put it on a business meeting when you hear from them.
Thank you, everybody.
Can I just revisit the first subject real quick? When I read the first sentence, it says facilities, but we're only talking about 451 Government Way.
Say it one more time, sorry. What was the question again?
Well, so in the situation of closing campus, we can close elections and stuff like that if it goes over to that. We're not going to close the sheriff's department, but we have JJC downtown. So if you like, I can list all specific ones.
I thought it only pertained to 451 Government Way.
Yes, but now that you're bringing up that situation, I'm thinking, well, elections and JJC were also affected during that snowstorm. Jennifer?
Yes, but I guess I want to go back because it's really important with administrative leave, whether it's on this campus or not. So if election shut or the sheriff shut down at noon, say, are you guys still determining because he made the call that those people are using their own accruals and not because,
Okay, so not in the past, we're talking about going forward.
okay.
So yes, that's what I would like.
Okay, so that's important to understand. So if you make the determination of closing, part of the sheriff's office, they're saying that people would be using their accruals. It would not be approved for administrative leave pay, and that's important for us, like in payroll. And after we talk about this, I want to go back to creating the overtime and making people whole, because that's going to be important in the policy, I think, too. So you can make the determination to close, from my understanding, but it would be on people's accruals, not on administrative leave pay.
So it doesn't only apply to 451 Government Way. So if we have this policy and Office of Emergency Management doesn't have anything on their calendar, and I say, yes, you can go ahead and work from home today,
Well, that's
Nope,
different, 'cause they're
totally
working.
different, completely different.
Because they're working. It's the idea that people, you send them home, or you shut a part of your building that can't work from home, then it would be their accruals versus people that are able to telecommute and work from home.
I don't know. I just think you're trying to micromanage an event that is very dynamic and very fluid. And the best people that know their operations is the elected official.
We're talking about closing facilities. If your people can work from home, then they can work from home. If they can't, then they can't. So we're not trying to put anything on anyone's operations. We're just talking about for the overall safety and condition of the situation. That's what we're looking at.
If it only applies to 451 Government Way, I think we should put 451 Government Way in the policy.
Okay, well, I would disagree. I would say elections and JJC, and maybe we just leave the sheriff's campus.
When I
out.
asked that earlier in the meeting, there was a affirmation that it only applied to
So
Government Way.
in my mind, admin campus kind of means those other situations too. But I see that we can more specific list all the facilities in there.
And what is the ramifications elected official if we don't follow these.
I
Ms.
guess
Paulson.
it's, well, I mean, are you authorizing admin pay for something that, the Board of County Commissioners didn't approve? Is that what you're talking about? I don't know what you're talking about to,
Well, I guess I just don't understand why the micromanagement of, we know that you have the power of the purse. We already know that. But to micromanage it in such a minute manner, I just,
If I could maybe ask a clarifying question, and I feel like we're going back to revisit the emergency, but if it's the board's intent to outline and define circumstances in which administrative leave with pay will apply or when it will not apply, is that really what this is about?
no, it's about whether or not the certain buildings should be closed due to hazards. Just a component of that is that admin pay.
So just want to clarify so we all understand. So if a department closes down in the admin building, or even, it sounds elections too, but the Board of County Commissioners or the designee doesn't make the determination to close the building, at that point what they're saying is the employee, if they choose to go home or you choose to close that department, is going to be using their own accruals. You can't put administrative leave with pay, correct? On
Correct.
timesheets? Okay.
Correct.
And then going back to, it's, I think, important in this policy, payroll brought up an example, not to create overtime, you're making the employee whole. So one of the questions that was asked to me, does the BOCC want to limit its use in creating an overtime straight situation? For example, an employee sent home after 4 hours of working on Friday, but they had worked through lunches all week. Do we pay the 4 hours? I think that's overtime, right?
Yeah, so if they hit 40 hours at noon and they weren't coming in the morning, we stop them at 40 hours. We're not going to pay them 42, giving them additional.
No.
Do you think it needs to be clarified?
I think it needs to be stated.
Okay, Sylvia.
I believe in the overtime policy, it may outline, and you guys can clarify, Grace, that admin leave with pay is not calculated in overtime. But we could clarify that as well in here, because it shouldn't, like if you've reached your threshold, I would give them 4 more hours or 2 more hours of leave time.
I think it needs to be stated.
Okay.
I believe there's a spirit of the law and a letter of the law. And I don't believe that the statute meant for the commissioners to micromanage 2 hours, 4 hours of compensation for an employee of a county that has 900 employees. I don't think that was the spirit of the statute. I believe that the elected official is the best person to determine their operations and what they need to accomplish to run a successful operation. I don't think it was in the spirit of the statute to micromanage 2, 4 hours, 6 hours.
I mean, as an extension of that, and reference back to my earlier definition of a hazard, we can all imagine what are hazards, but let's say, for example, there was some event that caused a lot of death. Well, my department can't say, oh, we're not going to go out as coroners and take care of
Correct.
the people who had this horrible hazard that occurred, and there's a lot of death out there because, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take all of your vacation time because the central office was closed. We come from a completely different point of view. When hazards occur, that's when we need to be there. So
It's the same thing though with the sheriff's office. The
Right.
deputies are not going home because it's hazardous road conditions.
okay,
So yeah, so that it actually doesn't really apply to you.
okay.
So if your building was closed, you guys still work from home anyway because somebody's got the duty phone and you respond out. I mean, nobody's coming to die at your facility.
Right.
So if the facility's closed, you guys are still working.
Right, exactly. That's why I was trying to get an understanding
Yeah.
of the definition of hazard.
And that's
It's like-
basically what I was saying as well. Only the coroner's going to be in the unique position to be able to address that. Sheriff's with regard to his operations, clerk with regard to clerks, and so forth. Assessor with regard to assessor. So the board, I agree that the board has the authority. I agree that there should be a standard. I agree that there should be clarification. The board does authorize the budget, and once it's authorized, the nuances of how that's administered is a matter that goes to the elected, and the elected probably should do that according to the best of their ability, weighing the circumstances and the standard. And it's not going to be the same in every case. So preserve the latitude is what I think we need to do, so.
Sylvia, you need to come to a microphone.
In the policy draft that we put together, it does mention non-emergency county facilities and operations. So if that language is in there, I think that's pretty clear that the comm center wouldn't be affected by this, or like the coroner's office, those sort of facilities, possibly the courts, but we did reference the courts in there. So I didn't know if everybody had noticed that, but it does reference non-emergency facilities and operations.
I think I'm referencing record staff at the sheriff's office. Okay, how many appointments? The weather says it's going to be horrible on Friday, really bad. Recommending people not to go out. How many appointments do you have scheduled for Friday afternoon? Call them, see if they can come in Wednesday or Thursday. Hi, ma'am, can you come in for your fingerprints on Wednesday? Oh, thank you so much, because I don't want to go out on Friday because I hear it's bad. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll come in. So I have employees that stay later on Wednesday and Thursday, and we clear the appointment log for Friday afternoon. And I say, hey, you guys stayed over on Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to close at 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon. We have cleared our appointment log, and we're done. I believe I should have that authority to be able to do that.
You can, because that's flex time. That's not admin pay, that's flex time. They worked these hours here, they're not working these hours here. It's flex time. So you absolutely have the
Within the same pay
authority.
period, right?
Yes, within the same pay period.
So whether closure,
Same week. It's actually
non-closure,
same week.
closure, non-closure, none of that is impacted by this.
I think it comes down to is if they determine that they're not going to close the campus, I think all campuses, and we choose to close down a department, we're telling the employees either they can stay, or if they don't stay, or we close the department in general, then it will not be administratively with pay. It'll be using their accruals. Am I
Yes.
correct on that?
Yes.
Well, then can you necessarily really force a closure? I mean, you can't necessarily force your people
That's
to
gonna be
take
hard.
vacation, can you? I mean, could you really close your department then? You know, if they're forced to take vacation?
Well, that, and you have to determine people that are exempt and non-exempt, so it's really affecting the hourly people more so than the exempt people.
Yeah,
And that was a legitimate
legally you
question.
can. Legally you can.
If
For
you can, okay.
non-exempt, you can. You
Okay.
have to be careful with the exempt staff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
This policy is really just to be proactive and to build some consistency, because I was involved when that closure came and all the emails coming through. And it was actually your staff asking what happens to us and stuff. So that's what drove this to trying to develop something that we give them some guidelines. Well, I was off and now you let somebody go home. Are you gonna offset my vacation leave? No, we're not, so it's really just to build a foundation. So everybody understands this is how, if we close, this is how we pay. If we don't close, this is how we don't pay, sort of thing. And I know there's the concerns among the electeds of who makes that decision. But we're just trying to build some continuity, and it would help with payroll, it would help with HR, and then your staff would have some understanding of what's gonna happen, whether you choose, me as a person, say, I'm not coming in, I'm not driving in this weather. Okay, it's on me versus on the county.
So the elected
taxpayer.
officials still has the ability to determine if they want to close a department, it's just a matter of how the individual that essentially
Gets
are
paid.
hourly are being paid.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to item number 3. Designate June 19th or day after Thanksgiving holiday. Most all the electeds have chimed in. I do not have an answer for the assessor's office, so if you went in, then I missed it.
And as clarification, designate that as a holiday. Are we talking about
June 19th.
foregoing another holiday at another time and moving it to this day? Is that what we're talking
June
about?
19th versus the day after Thanksgiving. Those are the choices with the elected officials, except for, of course, coroner and sheriff's department, because you guys just,
So
can't.
we're leaving it to each department to decide
elected
which one of the
official.
two they'd select.
each elected.
I'm okay
official.
with that.
I need to know. So our policy states that you have to let us know in January, which you have a few days, a couple
Okay.
weeks left. In January, we need to know per elected official who's
Okay.
going to be here and who is not, January 19th or day after Thanksgiving. And the treasurer chimed in and said they're taking the day after Thanksgiving off. They will be here June 19th.
And can I just,
Uh-huh.
because we're open and June 20th is the payment deadline, so that's going forward at least for now, probably half of the people that came in, and we had hundreds, including our new commissioner, asked why the assessor's office was closed. So if that helps, and we told them it's a holiday, but if that helps you make the decision, a lot of the people that come in to see us also want to see you, especially when they're paying
And I
their
think-
taxes.
Yeah, I think what happens is sometimes they come in thinking that we're the office to pay taxes and then.
Well, they're paying their taxes by
I will
office,
get,
asking.
I will get the board an answer
Okay.
today.
Thank you very
And we have
much.
clarification with the clerk. I want to, because of the courts, I talked to district court employees. I think for consistency with the clerk's division, we'll stay closed on the 19th.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and read down. So no answer from the assessor yet. The clerk is being closed on the 19th because of their relationship with the courts. Coroner, you're going to work 65 anyway.
Between the two,
Yeah.
they're closed on the 19th.
Well, you're not going to be closed on the 19th because you always have to have somebody on duty.
Right,
So,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
And then
And
district,
during hazards.
yeah, district judge is closed on the 19th. Prosecutor is closed on the 19th just for that relationship with the court. Sheriff is not going to be closed either day unless you want to just, your OM
Yeah, I
and
guess
your
I
records, civil.
have to have a little bit of a blend because the records
And
has
that's
to be
okay.
open for the courts
Yes.
to get those imperative arrest records to them in a timely manner, so
Yeah, and you've got the flexibility to do that operationally.
I'm so adult right now.
Okay, treasurer will be open the 19th and then closed the day after Thanksgiving. And then BOCC departments, we have a mixture because building and grounds is going to have to be open both days. IT is going to have people here both days. So similar to your situation. Okay, so that's it with the designation of the holidays. So each January, we'll revisit this in case things change and you guys decide, that was bad last year, we want to change it up, or, whatever you want to do. All right, number 4, reports. It is finally your turn.
Well, this is just an introduction to a subject that I learned about last week, and I think it's important that the elected officials are able to get good information so they can make good decisions. And what I learned is that we have a person upstairs in the BOCC who has access to the SQL tables of our software. And one of the nice things about that is that you can make reports, any kind of reports you want, to tell you whatever information you want. And the person who's doing this is going to be retiring this year. And I would hate to see that institutional knowledge leave. And that I realize that many of you are operating with old software, or you're limited by the kind of reports that the software can generate. And so I'd like to at least introduce the idea that if there's a way where we can access these tables and generate the kind of reports you need that can save you a lot of time, whether it's a real-time report so you can constantly check what's happening at that point in time, or just run the reports based upon variables that you think are important. I'd like to try to figure out a way of identifying what it is you can use information-wise that would really save you a lot of time, or your staff a lot of time, and then see if we can't get those reports built for you. I know that it's helped out HR a lot, among some other departments, I think the clerk's office as well.
Yes, I use the real-time budget for revenue and expenses, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and so if there's, one of the challenges, of course, is that we don't know what we don't know, and we're confined by what the software allows us to do. But when you get access to the tables, you can do whatever you want as far as reporting goes. And so I'd like to be able to at least talk with each of you at some point, hear out what your challenges are as far as information goes. The worst example, of course, is having data entered into a system and you actually having somebody enter data into another system. In today's day and age, that's incredibly inefficient. So, and then going all the way to, we just want to push a button and get all the information we need and not have to do anything else. So I just want to put that out there for you. This is something I want to kind of continue to work on, but I want to make I want to try to create an environment where you're helped with better information so that you can allocate your resources appropriately. And that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Are you specifically talking about Power BI?
That's one software. The other is actually you get into the SQL software itself and create custom queries is what it's called.
Yeah, that's something that's
about
very much on our radar. It's something we've been working on.
Yeah.
Part of the challenges for our systems that we have is they're proprietary systems and getting in there and getting the data. But we are working on that.
We're talking the financial ERP, right? The new,
We're only talking New World.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
But didn't New World open up their tables so that we could write these reports?
Yes, so.
But his software and stuff is different. It's
Yeah.
not connected to the system where she can get SQL reports.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have, them make reports for us off of our ProVal database. I don't think they would want to anyway.
But we are working on BI and data reporting.
Yeah.
So whether it's New World that you're talking about, yes, very interested in that, or our ProVal or our Momentum system, yes, very interested in working. We're actually creating some things right now. So our plan is to have data dashboards and report data and
Sure.
and present it.
From
Well,
ProVal? From ProVal?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, and
Out of Momentum, Nancy has access to our data. And if you go on the treasurer's webpage, there's a place where you can click and find out where your property taxes go for the 3-year period. That's Power BI, and that's using data from our
Oh, that's
Momentum database. Just so you guys.
Yeah, we're working on
We
it.
refer a lot of people to that. It's a really good Power BI. It really is.
well, if there's something that on my end can help facilitate things for you, I'm happy to chat with you. Same thing on the sheriff's office. I know there's always, better data could be, had
Absolutely.
on certain things. And it's something that, if I can help, if there's a way that we can get access to these tables, which I didn't think would happen in the New World, but they figured out a way to allow access. Maybe we can do that in other places, so. And that's it.
Any questions for Bruce? All right. Public comment, Jonathan? Nobody in the audience? All right, 9:58, meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks.